Welcome to the Peak Performance and Peak Satisfaction podcast with Master Executive Coach Sherry Gregoff. Sherry helps business people perform better, get rewarded handsomely, and actually enjoy their work. After having her own career turnaround, she now helps other high-powered business professionals experience the same. Join the movement to work differently.
Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here. As managers of talent, we may find ourselves on the fence about what direction to take with team members who aren't performing well. Emotions can run high, and avoidance is tempting. In today's episode, I share how to make careful assessments and take decisive action in your talent dilemma. Before we jump in, I want to shout out one of my clients who had a win in this area. Here's the quote from him. After coaching with Sherry, I was able to make the tough decisions on talent. I clarified the expectation for the role, the gap with current performance, and had underperformers choose to leave on their own. I know it was the right decision for the business now. This client was stretched in leading their team, needing to redirect and call team members to a higher level of performance regularly. In our work, he realized how unsustainable it was for him to plug the gaps for his managers who seemed locked into status quo and lacking the will and skill to perform to expectations. Having less than a year at the helm, he had postponed the difficult talent decisions to give people a chance and let everyone settle into his leadership and vision. In our coaching, he found the confidence and clarity to take decisive action in reshaping his team. He treated his team members with respect, but also firm candor. This gave them the clarity on the role they were in so they could decide it was not the right fit and move on to roles that were a better fit for them. In the end, that outcome was better for the individuals and for the business. Similar victories are shared by all of my clients, and I have experienced it too in my own career turnaround. So let's hop to today's podcast content and get you on your way to experiencing this also. Managing underperformance in our teams can be challenging. We set out with a team of a certain composition, and then individuals may underdeliver. We may feel torn about how to handle the situation. Most people managers that I coach will approach me with a talent dilemma that they are uncertain how to handle. Today, we are covering what is most often overlooked when actively managing our team's performance that can lead to months, if not years, of wasted time, harming the business, and even putting the company at risk. In this episode is everything you need to know as a manager facing underperformance within your team. Let's begin with why performance management trips us up so much. Here are some of the mindsets that lead to most talent decisions feeling like a conundrum. First, we usually wait too long to address performance issues. We don't always give real-time feedback. Sometimes performance issues have lingered for months, if not years. With that timing, it feels difficult or unfair to change the response to underperformance after it has been tolerated for so long. If this is you, let me remind you that as a leader, you are free to raise the bar on your team at any time. There is no requirement that what was tolerated before is tolerated tomorrow. I am granting you permission right now to elevate your team from status quo. There is a protocol to be followed in doing this, but we'll come back to that later. Another reason why talent issues can be puzzling is when we believe a team member's story. Here's what I mean. For every set of facts and circumstances experienced by you and this team member, there are usually 3 versions of the story: the perception of the employee, your perception, and the objectively observable facts. As we build relationships with our team members and lead with empathy, we may really start to believe an employee's perception of how their work history, career journey, current dependencies on other functions, the revolving door of previous managers, any of the above are limiting their current performance. When we see an individual as having gotten a raw deal and agree, we usually disempower them with the best of intentions. As their manager, it's our job to empathize with the challenges they faced or are facing, and always to inspire them to make the most of now, including a turnaround. Encouraging them to be limited by what has happened before or is happening around them will not help them overcome and excel. The third instance is similar. We repeat their work trauma stories over them and reinforce the identity that limits them, including to other stakeholders. So, for example, if a team member's predecessor was disrespectful and unprofessional, running the team like a dictatorship, we may lament the fact that this employee had to withstand that before stepping into the manager role themselves. We emphasize the lack of training or the subpar role model they had at the time. I have seen stories and work identities like this follow individuals for years, perpetuated by managers and the employees themselves, long after they changed the culture of the group and successfully drove change that was highly needed. That identity of being a victim of an old toxic manager or being a novice leader can follow an employee until we help them put it down, both in the story they repeat to themselves about their leadership identity and the story that is told about them to others. Fourth, we think conditions have to be perfect to act, whether terminating an employee or hiring around them. In an effort to give an employee every chance and a fair shot of producing, we may want to make all conditions perfect around them before truly assessing their performance. As I say this out loud, it may become apparent how impossible this is. In the moment, we usually don't recognize this, though. So we focus on the problem stakeholder of theirs and how that relationship isn't helping their situation, or the vacant role with knock-on effects to them. And we may postpone managing their performance until these ancillary circumstances improve. In business, however, all conditions will never be ideal. Prolonging active performance management or difficult decisions will never help the situation. Lastly, we don't want to hurt their feelings, and we want to be liked. So we procrastinate in delivering the difficult feedback. In caring for our team members, it's common to start to wear kid gloves and only tell them what they want to hear. We want them to be comfortable, and we want to feel comfortable ourselves. So we avoid the difficult conversations. We try not to upset them. But when there's underperformance, this usually overextends us, upsets us, our own managers, clients, other team members, and partners. When there is a broken link in the system, the ripple effects can be felt broadly. So in the end, choosing the comfortable path in the near term creates a lot of discomfort felt far beyond the team member. So, now that we know some of the reasons why we avoid the difficult talent decisions and discussions, let's discuss how to take them head on. First, let's cover how to assess talent. This comes up as a point of confusion regularly. Usually in a panic, because at this point the manager knows something is not working and feels the urgency to fix it. A basic framework that I often start with because it's simple and doable and easy to remember is to assess whether there is an issue of will or skill, or both, with this employee. Do they have the desire and motivation to do the job and do it well? The will. Assessing this goes beyond hearing the words they are saying to you, which might be somewhat hollow and aiming to please. Do you see a sincere effort being made? And remember, the goal here is not a witch hunt. By determining what their true motivations are, you can steer this process to what they truly want. So for example, if an employee really doesn't want to be there, and isn't motivated to do a good job. Sometimes they just need a little push out of the nest to find the right role for them. Determining their true intention is helpful for everyone. On assessing skill, evaluate what have they been able to deliver on with respect to the objectives and expectations that you've set for them. Were the objectives clear, measurable? Was the measure of success met? Is there expertise that's lacking? Experience, exposure, education? What is the missing ingredient on skill, and have you and they together, in earnest, looked to develop it? What have you asked them to complete, or what have they endeavored to do on their own that they were unable to complete? Or maybe it required too much hands-on guidance from you along the way. Do you feel that this skill gap is something that can be resolved while in the role, or is too large to address while also responsible for doing the job? Sometimes it's both will and skill. There's a gap in skill and the person isn't interested in addressing it or performing better. These are the most clear-cut cases to quickly move to a performance improvement plan to prompt either a significant change of heart or an exit in short order. Once you have evaluated the talent, the will and skill, it's time to take action. Enter the performance improvement plan. These words can make a manager shudder. The thought of all the work and documentation to go into it, and the sheer honesty required in delivering it, measuring against it, and managing the employee out if not met. But no discussion of managing underperformers up or out would be complete without covering this tool. Let's get into it today and dispel some of the drama around it. So first, why use a performance improvement plan? There are a couple of objectives that the PIP meets. It allows a manager to formally set the expectation for success and require regular updates against those measures so there are no misunderstandings. This may be in addition to normal course objective setting, depending on the time of year that the PIP is issued. Communication can be at the heart of underperformance, so having this documented formally and shared is key for everyone to be on the same page. Also, the PIP outlines a commitment to regular feedback to the employee so that they can incorporate said feedback to succeed. If this feels like a burden or a dreaded conversation, let me assure you, giving clear feedback along the way is kind. Sugarcoating, whether someone is meeting expectations or not, is setting them up for a rude surprise later, or robbing them of the opportunity for a performance turnaround. In this PIP, the manager will specify the parameters of regular feedback. The PIP raises the stakes when managing a performance issue. If the employee had been tuning out constructive feedback from you, even subconsciously, this formal communication, both verbal and written, makes it impossible to ignore. As humans, we sometimes hear what we want to hear. A written PIP in black and white cures this. Whether the employee agrees or not, they now know unequivocally where they stand. When to use a performance improvement plan. There are a few criteria that must be met before moving to the stage of a PIP with your employee. Number 1, evidence of clearly communicated objectives being shared and referenced with the employee. 2, documented pattern of low performance, both formally communicated and referenced in performance reviews, as well as detailed notes taken following one-on-one manager-employee meetings. Number 3, consistency of messaging around unmet expectations to the employee. If there is a possibility, even the perception of a possibility, that you as the manager have been vague or unclear on objectives and performance feedback with said employee, you must begin there instead. That is the prerequisite for progressing to the PIP stage. Pause here and candidly evaluate the situation. Take an honest look at your part in it while trying to be as objective as possible. If you have a human resources partner that you can confer with and review the circumstances of the performance issue with, they too can serve as an independent check on whether this prerequisite is met. As a manager, you are responsible for setting clear, measurable objectives for your employees and providing them regular feedback on how their performance is lining up against your expectations. If you have not done this, do this now. There's 2 golden rules when it comes to managing performance. Number 1, there should be no surprises. An employee should never be surprised by a performance rating or performance review. If you are communicating feedback, both positive and constructive, regularly. Without this, the employee will feel as though they've been led astray or not given the opportunity to improve all along. Number 2, being clear is kind. As managers, it can be tempting to think that by watering down a message or skipping over the constructive feedback, we are easing up on a team member. While delivering constructive feedback can seem uncomfortable, it is how we do right by the employee, the firm, and ourselves as managers. Being clear and direct allows the employee to learn from the feedback and to improve their performance. As a manager and coach, this should always be a priority for us. If every team member is performing their best, the business will succeed, and all will be recognized and rewarded. Put aside your reservations on having the difficult conversation and consider it an investment in the future of the employee and the business. Recognize that the alternative is withholding that opportunity for the employee to be successful in a counterproductive attempt to keep things comfortable for everyone involved. Think of when you have spinach in your teeth and you don't know it. For someone to tell you that you have spinach in your teeth, it can be pretty uncomfortable for them. They may feel bad pointing out something that doesn't look quite right. They anticipate that you may feel a bit embarrassed or exposed. When you hear this feedback about the spinach, the initial response may be a cringe. But then, of course, you're so glad that you have the opportunity to address it before you're seen by many others, or give that big presentation, or have that upcoming interview. Ultimately, you're glad someone pointed out to you so that you could fix it. Constructive feedback works this same way. Imagine the person you just had a long conversation with seeing themselves in a mirror and wondering why in the world you didn't point out to them the spinach in your teeth. They may be upset with you or feel wronged that you didn't value their ultimate benefit enough to say the uncomfortable thing. Are you seeing constructive feedback similarly yet? Let's talk about a strong way to call out the spinach in the teeth. The goal of a performance improvement plan. The PIP will serve to call attention by formally identifying the performance issue and setting the specific terms by which the employee can meet it and continue employment. The underlying goal here is to help the employee by setting them up for success in improving their performance. The process should serve to re-underwrite the alignment of the manager and employee to partner for the employee's improvement and success. How not to use a performance improvement plan. If there is any sign of punishment, shaming, vindictiveness, or combative intent on the part of the manager, other steps must be taken and support sought by the manager before proceeding. As a professional, the manager is required to remain cool-headed and objective in assessing performance and behave partnerly and constructively to coach the employee effectively. Any emotionally charged reactions or evaluations must not be tolerated and will threaten the efficacy of the process. Seek coaching from your manager, human resources, or a performance coach to guide you. If you ever feel like you're on opposing sides, he said, she said, or that there will be one winner at the end of the day, it's time to adjust your perspective. As manager and employee, you share the same collective objectives. All things equal, neither party would seek out spending time selling themselves at a new company or selling the role to new people, scoping out new roles, or interviewing different talent. If the current combination of this employee in this role with this objective was extraordinary, then there would be no reason to pursue changing it and taking on the work involved. So truly, your collective preference would be to make it work. If it hasn't been working well, the collective objective is to improve the situation. In this effort, you are in this together, like it or not. Contrary to popular belief, no one wants to consistently be underperforming in a role, saying to themselves, I can't wait to get to work today and screw things up. What if the one missing element for this individual is you releasing any judgment? A great way to do that is to remind yourself that everyone has things they are working to improve upon, even you. So here's an individual on your team who has things to work on, who has, if we're totally honest, been doing the best they can with what they know and the skills that they have. So their underperformance may not be intentional. It's also not a conviction against you as their manager if you are taking this underperformance as disrespect or a consequence of your management. It helps to start objectively and neutrally, to open up your brain to truly partner no matter what the outcome ends up being. We put our best foot forward, we give it the best shot of working out, and then there's no regrets. Even if it ends in termination, you will know that you did your best to help the business, the individual, and yourself improve the work experience and results. Performance Improvement Plan Example Language. Here are examples of sample language that can serve as a basis for the PIP. The PIP should be on formal corporate letterhead in memo format. The PIP is addressed to the employee from the manager, with copy to the human resources professional and the manager's manager. This serves as formal communication to the employee of the commencing of a performance improvement plan. The plan will be administered by the manager, who will monitor the employee's progress against objectives. The employee's performance must improve to meet the requirements of this plan by X date, or the employee's employment contract will be terminated. This is where you clarify the basis of the underperformance observed. So categories to include here may include specific business objectives not met, missing skills, or counterproductive behaviors. So it's a measure of capability, delivery of results, and how they deliver. For each category that applies, note specific evidence or instances so that the problems you are highlighting are not subjective. It's concrete and objectively observable. Then, to support the employee's development and success in following the plan and meeting the requirements enclosed, the following measures will be taken. Weekly 30-minute one-on-one meetings between the manager and employee. On no less frequently than a bi-weekly basis, the manager will provide feedback, both positive and constructive, on the employee's performance in the role, both verbal and written. Commitment from both the manager and the employee to put forth best efforts to improve performance by providing and incorporating constructive feedback. Here are the measures of success that will be used to gauge performance improvement. Now here again, the more specific you are on measures of success, the easier it will be for everyone to gauge the outcome of the PIP. So spend the time upfront to define success and the associated measures. At the conclusion of the PIP, whether an individual continues in their role, is placed on an extended PIP, or is terminated, a formal closure of the PIP should take place, both in person and be documented. This protects the manager should the employee improve in the short term, but quickly fall back into old routines thereafter. Again, the goal here is to manage the employee up consistently or out. A final word on this. As managers, we are not meant to be the fixers, the one with all the answers, the one who drives positive change alone. We are managers so that we can build these same skills in our people to multiply our impact. I think of it as teaching a woman or man to fish, rather than feeding them the fish or the answers. Not only is the latter not sustainable, it does them a disservice by never compelling them to build the skill themselves, to be independent and broaden their future opportunity set. If you teach them how to fish, to be successful independently from you, you have given them the ultimate gift that will serve them well for years to come. Be the manager that your team member points back to for decades to come as the mentor who taught them so much, advocated for them, and set their career on a positive trajectory. I have several managers I could put in this category myself. I contact them every so often to thank them for being an important part of my journey and helping to shape the leader I am and the people manager that I aspire to be today. Being a strong leader does include having the courageous conversations. As managers, we aren't just deliverers of good news. We aren't there to primarily make the employees comfortable. We don't value our egos being stroked or our employees' popularity vote for us more than growing their impact to the business. That would be selfish and short-sighted. Team members can read our motives right away. Instead, call them up to higher levels of performance and impact, which helps them, us, and the business. We always operate with high levels of respect and professionalism. The antiquated ways of public shaming, leading through fear, and frankly abuse, still exists in some corner offices. It's not the winning strategy. That type of approach only ends in self-destruction from cases raised by employees or degradation of the business because the best talent won't tolerate that treatment, and they quickly move on to a work environment where they are valued, groomed, and respected. Remember this, in every performance management and termination conversation, you can have these courageous conversations with compassion based on facts. So whether your paths cross again professionally or personally, the bridges are never burned. As leaders, we take one for the team. We do the hard thing to improve things for the rest of the team, for the business partners, the clients, and for our own ability to perform in our roles, and for the impacted individual who needs the closure to know that it's time to find a role that is a better fit for all. This can often come as more of a relief than one might initially think. As we discussed at the top of this episode, sometimes a nudge out of the nest is what is needed to get everyone in a better place. Happy leading. You've got this. If you could use assistance in talent issues, schedule your complimentary one-on-one consultation with me today at the link in the show notes. Until next time.
Looking for support in applying the principles and strategies in today's episode? Sherry coaches clients one-on-one as their trusted confidant and advisor, helping each client create the work and life they had only dreamed of. To schedule your complimentary career strategy session, go to sherrygregoff.com/apply to book time with her today. It's one simple step that can change everything.